It's our pleasure, John Juristics, and my pleasure this morning to welcome Ambassador Jeremy Kinsman to the conversation on Trade Diversification Chatter. Jeremy is a distinguished retired former diplomat. He was High Commissioner in London. He was ambassador in Italy. He was ambassador in Russia. He was ambassador to Brussels and the European Union. Beyond that, he held very senior policy positions in the Department of External Affairs, as it was at the time, and Global Affairs later, including senior political advisor and assistant deputy minister for security. He took a slight departure and was an ADM in the Department of Communications at one stage, which sort of foreshadowed his later role in his career, because for many years he has been the senior foreign policy commentator on CTV National News. He runs a podcast called The Red Passport. No surprise, as a diplomat, he carried one. He is a careful observer of the human condition in the passing parade. And there are too many of us who are too closely involved in the tumbling machine, which is Washington politics and global trade. Jeremy's had a long career in shaping the policy environment and then on the front line in major markets for Canada. Jeremy, welcome this morning, and very keen to hear your views on the latest developments in Washington, of course, including a decision by the U.S. Supreme Court.
Oh, Jeremy, before you get going, I'm jumping in. John Trelevin, I'm jumping in. Yesterday, Our team lost the gold medal in the Olympic final in hockey, and I'm really pissed. Compounded by, a year ago, this fellow down south introduced tariffs and tariff chaos to our country. And now, a few days ago, we get the Supreme Court basically saying it was all illegal. Details. Jeremy, what is going on in the tariff world for Canada?
Well, in addition to the nice things John said, I was also in Washington for several years as Canada's Minister for Political Affairs, trying to figure out that country. And, I never really reached the golden end of conclusions. But this behavior by Donald Trump is so exceptionalist, it outstrips anything we've ever seen before. I mean, we are every day, we're, absolutely opening an unknown chapter of the future. On the tariffs, he always says it's the most beautiful word in the dictionary for him. And I guess he does actually believe in 19th century tariffs. But the reason he likes it is because ultimately what he is an ultra-nationalist sovereigntist. And we have built the post-war order, and particularly in trade, where you've worked so long, John, on the basis of what we call pooled sovereignty, with the purpose being open markets. He hates pooling American sovereignty and the idea, so he hates the WTO. And he hates the idea of free trade, open markets, because he is essentially a protectionist and a nationalist. And that is why he leapt into these tariffs on so-called Liberation Day, almost a year ago, slamming them to left and to right, to all countries, irrespective of their relationship to the United States, often on spurious grounds, like he was doing to Canada because of the amount of fentanyl that was flooding the United States from our country. All of this stuff was kind of crazy. But the reason he was doing it was because he thought he could. And that is, the single reason that he does everything. When asked if, with respect to Venezuela and the decapitation of that leader, asked if he wouldn't want to respect international law, he said, "Oh, I love international law, but I really do what my own morality tells me to." And that's what this is about. And ultimately, the Supreme Court, having gone along with him on his extraordinarily expansive interpretation of executive authority on smaller case after smaller case. I think that his administration ignored over 100 court orders in January alone. This time said, here's the red line, stop it. You do not have the authority to do that. And the authority he's abusing is not just, the process and the institution. It's the reason. He can't just invent reasons and threats to national security for the sake of having his way. And it's a huge decision. Of course, it's a huge decision for these tariffs, and we can get to that. But it's a huge decision on the part of the Supreme Court, particularly Justice Gorsuch's rationale, which is that essentially what he's doing is that he is not just ignoring Congress, he is undermining Congress, which was, of course, always in the days of the founders of the writers of the Constitution, meant as the People's Congress to be the superior of the three institutions, of the three powers of the American system. And so it's a big, huge deal. Now countries are trying to see what it means. There were a lot of countries, as we know, who bent over themselves, giving Trump gold bars in the Oval Office to get a good deal. That was Switzerland. Or this Keir Starmer coming in and totally gormlessly pulling out from his inside coat suit pocket a gilded invitation, and Trump likes guilt, a gilded invitation from King Charles to have a second state visit.
Makes me want to vomit.
Doing everything to try to get a deal. And now many of those deals, by the way, are overtaken entirely, not just because the Supreme Court has thrown them out, because he has now imposed a 15% tariff, which supersedes many of those deals terms that they thought they'd extracted. So it's really a chaotic situation, and it's got everybody off balance, which is where he likes them.
Yeah.
Jeremy, is there a 747 for sale now, either by a Middle Eastern power or by the United States?
Probably lined up. Go ahead, John. I got lots of questions for Jeremy.
Yeah, as you know, the focus of this discussion is business transactions. Our observation, John and my observation, is that many of the discussions about trade diversification are in the framework as if nations trade. Well, nations do trade statistically, but businesses do business. And what we're looking at is ways of assisting the Canadian business community to diversify trade. And to give you an example, as you know, Mr. Carney has said he wants to, over 10 years, divert $300 billion worth of trade. I think that's the number he used. Well, Jeremy, when I was in the global affairs with you a long time ago, we chaired a group of economists who concluded at that time, in the mid-90s, $1 billion worth of exports created or sustained 11,000 jobs. So today we're more productive. Let's say it's 5,000. Do the math. That kind of shift in the Canadian labor market, which can only be accomplished by finding new customers for new products and new markets, is huge. To say it's aspirational is an understatement.
I agree with you, John. I worked in 1970 as a very young man on the wonderful, exuberant experience of what was called the third option. It's not the first time that the United States, speaking of Trump's now 15% tariffs, which have all kinds of conditions attached to them that he won't like. But it's not the first time that, and which a president is allowed to impose if there is a serious deficit problem. And then I guess it was 1970, Richard Nixon and Secretary Connolly perceived there was, and slammed a global 10% tariff on all imports into the United States. And Canadian officials thought we were so tied at the hip with Washington that couldn't possibly have meant us. There must have been a mistake, a glitch in the press release, but it indeed meant us. And Pierre Trudeau then launched an exercise to reduce our vulnerability to the United States and to what seemed to be impetuous decisions that affected our vital interests by strengthening national institutions in our defense. And we went on and created the CDC and FIRA and the much maligned National Energy Program, but they were that. But the other side of it was diversification to other markets. And at that time, the market that seemed the most apt target was the common market, which was evolving into the European Economic Community, and today is the European Union. And it didn't work. And it didn't work because Canadians weren't really up to changing their habits and changing their perspective, shifting it from the easy access in the English language from the United States to wherever, to Germany or to France, that it just seemed too complicated. And that part of it, talking about the reality that you're talking about, that it actually isn't in the fiat of the government to decide, it's up to business to do it, they just couldn't get it done. Well, today, Carney is essentially saying sort of the same thing. But he understands, I think, what I just said, and he is doing it differently, and he's doing it in a different world. And you told me the other day, John, of somebody you know who had most of her business sent to the United States. This is a small business, a creative business with customers, and that the shipments could fit in under the $800, which the de minimis threshold, which could get to the United States duty free. And that, apart from tariffs, that was just thrown out by the United States not long ago. And yet this person, as opposed to then, has the advantage of a whole lot of things working for her. And that is almost everybody out there now in marketing speaks English. And she has the internet through which she can radiate her product to these different markets. It's actually very, very much easier than it was then. So that's some hope. But I think other things happen. And I just mentioned this and then stop. Carney has a perspective of big project, joint venture partnership, cooperation to be the kind of anchor to such a shift. And in that, I think he's absolutely right. He has got the Europeans and others, but mostly the Europeans, interested in him and in Canada as nowhere before. Now, that interest has been largely sparked by his own reputation as governor of two central banks and his rhetoric, which has been extremely effective. But he's also out there trying to get the projects. And if you just take two, I can think of, and then just think for a minute about the Arctic. One of these projects is not to buy the F-35. Well, we have to buy the American F-35. We already have bought, I think, 18, and we started to pay for another 18. But we could well have a mixed fleet with Saab. They have a plane called Gripen, 1/4 the price of the F-35, appropriate to patrols in the north, and to create an assembly line here in Canada at Bombardier to produce these and to be able to market more of them to other customers, such as the Ukrainians, who seem to be in the market for 100 to 150. And that kind of big project cooperation is a huge kind of catalyst. If you take the other big one I can think of in defense, it's submarines. The Germans and Norwegians are building, I think, 12 submarines. They're not atomic submarines. They're electric submarines. And they're absolutely terrific with some modifications. For us, two of them in the market in the Arctic. And this project may well turn out to be another major catalyst. We may also alternatively buy them from South Korea. We'll see how that works. I think the big project model, the one I think the export model I think of is the hydrogen project, that the Germans were terribly interested in attracting energy purposes, clean energy from Canada, that Justin Trudeau said, oh, well, our business isn't interested in that. But actually it would be a huge, what will I say, spur. I'm very much looking forward to what we develop with something called the NV8. And those countries are the Nordic countries, I think there are 5, and the 3 Baltic countries, with whom we have an enormous amount in common, both in terms of sort of social policies, but also in the organization of our business demography. You know, we don't have some of the big companies that we had when we were younger. I worked for one, Alcan. We've lost them, you know, and some others have fallen by the wayside for a variety of reasons. I remember when Nortel had the 3rd biggest market cap in the world, and in Europe, Nortel was all the talk. We don't have, and Bombardier sold off its German production of railway cars, which was, you know, just absolutely dominating the railway car and subway car market in France. Those companies are either changed or gone, or absorbed by some foreign company. But we still have strong instruments, world leaders. Look at CAE, for example. I can think of many, and so can you. So I have some hope that this time that diversification will be based on solid realities, but particularly advantageous to small and medium-sized business, particularly, by the way, in services, where we're doing very well, particularly in digital services, and also in major capital projects.
Jeremy, that's amazing. Something happened a year ago to every single Canadian, and we had like a hit in the head. Boom. I hate Trump. I do not approve of their policies, but it might have been the best thing that happened to us. The laissez-faire attitude around, oh, as you indicated, well, frankly, why would I go shift to trading in Europe? It's easy as anything to trade in Seattle or California for us on the West Coast. That has all changed to the better. So I think you're absolutely right. But John, I have a question for Jeremy. We're talking to the statesman of statesmen, the diplomat of the insider of insiders here. My concern, and what I'm hearing amongst other business people, is that Trump will ignore this order by the Supreme Court, and he will just do whatever the hell he wants. And so whereas there was some relief that maybe one of the other levels of government in the U.S. is actually going to stop this crazy man, there's a concern he's not. What are you hearing from your inside network?
Well, my inside network is, in this case, the source is the Wall Street Journal. I mean, who is looking at this more avidly than anybody else. Yes, you're right. He's going to try and do it every which way. But the conditions that apply are very constraining. First of all, under the most prominent authority, it's only good for 150 days. It's subject to, each one this time is subject to investigation. Investigation to substantiate the justification for putting on the tariff on other countries. And it's going to be stuck in the courts for a long time. By the way, as will be the refund process from the tariffs that now have been shot down. You know, there are some tariffs, those on national security grounds, which are verifiable. In other words, you can't just invent them. They're going to stick around. And our own situation, you know, the ones that are there under the remnants of NAFTA, Kuzma, are still, for the time being anyway, still intact. So he can't just do what he wants. He's going to give his State of the Union speech tomorrow night. He's going to say he's going to do it, and it's in the interest of America. It's emphatically not in the interest of America, and the business communities, big and small, are saying that to the White House, I guess, loud and clear. And so, by the way, is American polling. It's very, very anti-tariff. I think the bigger question that one has to address in answering this is, have we had now peak Trump? I don't mean Trump in our ears and on the news. I mean Trump in effectiveness. His effectiveness now is going to be on a glide down. He's heading into lame duck territory. Maybe he can pull off something spectacular and absolutely seductive in the remnant of this year going up to the midterms, but it doesn't look like it. And so, the business community is saying he'll just do this or do that. I think now he can't. He's constrained. He says he's going to use these other authorities. I mean, that's sections 232 and 301 and 122 but they're all conditional. So I think that it's a slightly different world, not totally different, but because it's the same guy with the same impulses. Yeah. But it is slightly different in terms of expectations. But we don't know exactly how it's going to work out. And that uncertainty, as you know, as you were talking about the reality of business, uncertainty is the enemy of business. Yeah. And so it's not news. It's not happy days are here again. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Jeremy, if I could ask a question, what you're saying, the situation that Trump finds himself in, does this hasten the day when the fallacy behind his whole trade rhetoric, the United States doesn't need any country for any reason, we're all fine, meets the reality of the potash shippers, the aluminum, Arvida you worked at? I mean, Boeing aircraft are covered in aluminum from Canada for a reason. The reality, the chips that are coming into, I mean, the United States is a trading economy.
Well, of course, 80% of American aluminum is imported, and the guys, Coors Light uses aluminum cans. They're not going to wait. Say, oh yeah, it's great. Let's get the aluminum made here. Where are the smelters? Oh, well, we have to build smelters. Oh, how long does that take? Probably one of the most capital intensive, form of building there is building a smelter. And by the way, what's going to fire the energy of these smelters? I mean, the Canadian ones get hydro. Where's our hydro? They're going to be gas fired. I see. Well, that's not going to, and so on and so forth. There's an unreality to a lot of these things. They're threats that are brandished and cause enormous problems, as they are for aluminum and steel producers in Canada. But they, in a sense, they're not compelling threats, because the importers of aluminum, some of the biggest industries, as you say, Boeing, need aluminum now.
And the Iowa farmer needs potash from Saskatchewan.
Can't
buy it anywhere else.
Absolutely. So there you go. Trump will continue to cause problems. For example, he has a problem with the deal that Carney signed with the Chinese to import, was it 40,000 build your dream electric cars, which, by the way, I live part of the time in England, and my supermarket, Waitrose, is filled with them. And the reason is that, yes, as Ford said, they're cheap. Actually, the word he should have used was inexpensive, because they're not cheaply made. They're terrific. Wow. Anyway, he can say, you did that. I don't mind your canola deal. Well, of course, he doesn't mind the canola deal with China. But what he forgets, what everybody forgets, the canola import ban from China, the high tariff, was in return for our seizing on American request a sort of fraudulent order to arrest the vice president of Huawei. and everything we went through there. Everything is connected, and it's not, we've got to be ourselves. And his using tariffs to punish Brazil 100% at one point because they were pursuing the guy he liked, Bolsonaro, for whatever it was, uprising, and the
days are over.
Those days are over.
Yeah. I have a final question for you as we're reaching the internet's patience threshold. I focus on Washington and everything going on there. I'm going to make a switch now to Ottawa. Tell me, how does Carney look at all this? Is he going, I knew this was going to happen. I've been waiting for this to happen. We're not going to be negotiating Kuzma or we are going to be negotiating differently. How does this all impact us in Ottawa and the policymakers?
I'm going back to your perception that what we need to do is think of those who are practically involved in day-to-day substance of trade relations. And that's basically the exporters, the business community, the agricultural community, oil and gas people, and everything else. I think Carney is, I wouldn't say uniquely, but is very, very attuned to that reality. In other words, government can't do it. Government can only partner with companies who see their business interests or the interests of their shareholders or whoever in doing such a thing. And so part of his job is persuasion. And it can't be empty persuasion. It has to be fact-based. But you know who he has to persuade first? I'm convinced. You're talking about Ottawa. It's the public service. They haven't had this kind of, leading from the top. Stephen Harper did it in his way, but this is something very different. The new concepts and new energies, and that's why I think the appointment that is most intriguing is that of Michael Sabia, who has run huge businesses in Quebec and elsewhere, and who knows the score, and knows Ottawa. And it's up to him to mobilize, to get the right people and mobilize people, to get people into the public service from business. And I think that's what they're doing with their new agencies. So I think that's different. And I think it's healthy. And we got to watch it. I watch it with expectation. Others watch it with trepidation. But the guy's doing it, and may in the end, hit imponderable barriers. But I think not. I think what he's got going for him right now is enormous, a reputational advantage that actually we all are partaking of, benefiting from.
Yeah.
And you may have seen it at the Olympics. I mean, it was there. And I'm sorry, but we lost two great hockey games. The women.
Yeah, I know.
And,
well, that men's game, we were dominating, and we had anyway. It hurt. I've seen a lot of these, but that one hurt a bit more.
Yeah, I know, but you don't miss three breakaways. God laughs.
Right. Exactly. 3 empty netters. Yeah. I'll tell you something, Jeremy, that I'm feeling these days. I've been in business now 45 years. I'm a serial entrepreneur because it's a disease, not because I necessarily want it. And I remember Canada in the 90s, early 2000s. We were innovative, global innovators. We had the ideas. We had the energy. We were prepared to take the risk. We were doing things ahead of everyone else. That was who we were. That was what a Canadian meant to be. I was proud to be that business person. Then there came this kind of place where all that sort of stopped. And we sort of lost that kind of productivity of mind, efficiency of mind. I feel it's come back in a tsunami of optimism and strength. And I think you're starting to help me confirm that. Thank you, Jeremy.
Well, I look out over the inner harbor of Victoria, and over there are, along Johnson Street and Yates Street, right down by the water, There are a lot of late Victorian buildings that have been redeveloped, and in them is a myriad of startups in tech. And that sector in this medium-sized Canadian town is now worth over $1 billion. Mm-hmm. And those guys are not, selling to people like you and me. They're selling all over the world, mm-hmm. and they're doing it. They're doing terrific add-ons to existing applications everywhere. And they've become kind of vital. And I think it's going on. It is going on again across the country. We used to rely on Massey Ferguson and everything to brand ourselves. I think this branding is being done by individual Canadian, as you say, entrepreneurs in a legion, silently out there, moving into other countries' vital sectors as being absolute dependable suppliers of what people need. But it's not right now. Increasingly, it's brainware, and it's working.
In a couple of days, we're going to interview Mark Hobbs. Mark Hobbs lives in Halifax. He's a computer software genius. His company is called Fundmetric. And he's created a software package for charities to manage their donor relations and their compliance at a higher state. So if I told you that the Juilliard School of Music, the University of Texas, Kent State University, the University of California, University of Oregon are using Mark Hobbs' system, I think it makes your case. Yes, of course, the country's full of young, energetic, and genius entrepreneurs,
and old, energetic, and genius people.
Well, that's true. Jeremy, I just want to make one more point to compliment the Prime Minister from my perspective, because I've been trying to beat this drum for about 30 years. One of the first things that he did that mattered was to make the commitment that there will be one internal market in Canada.
Yeah.
So that for our internationally competitive businesses, there will be a compatible, reliable, competitive platform. And the CFIB has done the study for years. In the United States, the effective tariff barrier between states is 3%. In Canada, between provinces, it's 21%. So he has the banker's logic, right? He studied all aspects of what it takes to create a more competitive economy, and he's acting. And I hope that he has the same resolve that he's demonstrating on the global stage. I mean, he's tireless in building relationships and traveling the globe and getting his ministers to do the same thing and working with business. I hope he has the same resolve to end internal trade barriers. I think he has.
I think he has. I hope I hope premiers and political systems and everything get it. I mean, I have a friend who, and you probably know him too, who is probably Canada's biggest producer of what the Capone family or the prophets used to call the beverage business, and making a hell of a good beer, Hell's Gate, in Vancouver, among many other beverages. And he got terribly frustrated because he couldn't export his beer to Alberta or elsewhere in Canada. I mean, you got to amortize your capital costs of building the brewery and everything else. What he could do is that he could build a brewery in the United States and export back to Canada all of what he wanted to without that ridiculous interprovincial tax.
The company is called Seasider. It's in the Saanich Peninsula. Brilliant business, started not that many years ago. In the end, they were exporting to 6 states in the United States, not building cideries from one cidery in the Saanich Peninsula. They couldn't get their product into Alberta.
Yeah. So I hope people understand that ridiculous reality, because it's not just words. I mean, or theory. It's fact. And we got to grow up, and
yeah, we are certainly okay. Jeremy, this week is State of the Union.
Yeah.
This week, the Clintons are testifying in front of House oversight committees.
Yeah.
Possibly a war in Iran. Sounds to me like we're going to be, hopefully you'll be so inclined to talk to us again. What do you think about that?
Hey, you bet. It'd be a great
Okay.
pleasure.
Thank you very much for chatting with us, Jeremy.
Thank you, Jeremy.
And John,
Adios.
take care.
Adios, amigos.
Adios.